Alien General begged, "Leave humanity alone." The Empire paid for ignoring him. General Kethver stood in the center of the Imperial War chamber and felt the weight of 200 conquests pressing down on his shoulders. Not from pride, but from what he was about to say, the High Tribunal of the Varth Dominion sat in their elevated seats, their gray scales gleaming under the cold light of the chamber. 12 the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. And they were all waiting for him to speak. He had never hesitated before a battle in his entire life. But today his throat felt dry. "Speak, General," Supreme Commander Draal said from the highest seat, his voice carrying the impatience of someone who had never been told no. "You requested this audience to discuss the species called humans. We are listening." Kethver activated the holographic display, and a blue and green planet appeared in the center of the room. It was beautiful in a savage way, covered in violent oceans and unstable landmasses. "This is Earth," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Homeworld of humanity. I have spent 3 cycles observing them in secret, studying their history, their behavior, their nature. And what have you concluded?" asked Tribune Voss, leaning forward with the hungry look of a predator. "Their colonies sit on resource-rich worlds. Their military technology is primitive compared to ours. This should be a simple conquest." Kethver took a deep breath. "My conclusion is that we should avoid them completely," he said. "We should not attack them. We should not contact them. We should pretend they do not exist and hope they never learn about us." Silence filled the chamber, and then laughter broke out from several tribunes. Draal did not laugh. His eyes narrowed with dangerous curiosity. "Explain yourself, General. You have never retreated from any enemy. Why do you fear these creatures?" "Because they are not like any enemy we have ever faced," Kethver said, and he changed the holographic display to show human history. "Look at their past. They have fought each other for their entire existence. War after war, conflict after conflict. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their own planet multiple times over, and they still exist. That proves they are primitive and violent," Tribune Koss interrupted. "Surely that makes them easy to—" "It proves they survive," Kethver cut him off, something he had never done before. "Their planet tries to kill them every single day. Extreme temperatures, deadly predators, natural disasters, diseases that mutate faster than medicine can adapt. By every logical measure, they should have gone extinct thousands of years ago. Instead, they spread to the stars." He showed them footage he had secretly recorded. A human soldier continuing to fight with one arm blown off. A group of civilians forming a defensive line with nothing but farming tools. A mother lifting a vehicle that should have been impossible for her body to move because her child was trapped underneath. "They do not stop," Kethver said quietly. "When they are wounded, they keep fighting. When they are outnumbered, they become more dangerous. When you threaten what they love, they transform into something else entirely." Draal waved his hand dismissively. "You show us isolated incidents of desperation. Every species fights harder when cornered." "No," Kethver said, and his voice carried a weight that made some tribunes shift uncomfortably. "Other species surrender when the situation becomes hopeless. Humans do not understand hopeless. They have a concept in their language, spite. It means continuing to fight purely to cause pain to your enemy, even when victory is impossible." He paused to let that sink in. "I watched a human city after a natural disaster," he continued. "Thousands dead, infrastructure destroyed, no help coming for days. Do you know what they did? They organized. Strangers helped strangers. They shared food with people they had never met. They pulled survivors from rubble until their hands bled, and then they kept pulling. Compassion is weakness," Draal said coldly. "Compassion is what makes them terrifying," Kethver replied, "because they extend that same loyalty to anyone they consider family." "And Supreme Commander, Humans have a very broad definition of family. He changed the display one final time, showing human military responses to attacks on civilian populations throughout their history. When someone hurts their people, they do not just defend, he said. They hunt. They do not stop until the threat is eliminated. Not defeated, eliminated. They will chase an enemy across the galaxy if they have to. They will sacrifice everything. They will burn their own ships to take down an enemy vessel. And they will keep coming until either they are all dead or their enemy no longer exists. Tribune Voss laughed nervously. You speak of them as if they are monsters. They are not monsters, Kethver said. Monsters can be understood. Humans are something worse. They are survivors from a death world who learned that the only way to live is to protect each other at any cost. He turned to face Draal directly. I am begging you, he said, using words he had never spoken in his military career. Leave humanity alone. Find other worlds. There are thousands of species we can conquer without risk. But if we attack humans, if we hurt their families, we will awaken something we cannot stop. Draal stood slowly, his massive form casting a shadow over the general. You have grown old, Kethver, he said. Your fear has made you forget what we are. The Vorath Dominion has never retreated. We have crushed 200 species beneath our feet. These humans with their primitive ships and emotional weaknesses will be no different. They will be very different, Kethver said quietly. Enough, Draal commanded. The invasion fleet launches in 10 cycles. You will lead the ground forces, General. Perhaps combat will remind you of your courage. Kethver stood perfectly still as the tribunes filed out of the chamber, already discussing how they would divide the human territories among themselves. When he was alone, he activated his personal communicator with trembling hands. My family, he said to the encrypted channel. Leave the capital immediately. Go to the outer colonies. Do not return until I contact you. He looked at the image of Earth still floating in the hologram. I am sorry, he whispered to a species that could not hear him. I tried. Then he walked out to prepare for a war he knew his empire could not win. The sky above New Bizon turned dark with alien ships. And for a moment, the entire colony went silent. 40,000 people lived on this mining world. Most of them families who had come seeking a better life among the stars. They had built homes in the valleys and schools near the rivers. They had created something beautiful on a planet far from Earth now. Death hung above them in the shape of 100. Warship's colony administrator Park Yuna stood in the command center watching the sensors fill with hostile contacts. Her hands were steady even though her heart was racing. She had 2 children at home. She had a community that trusted her. She had no military training whatsoever. The communication screen flickered to life and a massive gray-scaled face appeared. Supreme Commander Draal looked at her the way a predator looks at prey. I am Draal of the Vorath Dominion, he announced. Your colony now belongs to us. You will surrender all resources and present your population for processing. Resistance will result in immediate extermination. Yuna took a slow breath before responding. I am Administrator Park Yuna, she said calmly. We are a civilian mining colony. We have families here, children. I request time to evacuate non-combatants before any military action. Draal made a sound that might have been laughter. You have 1 hour, he said. Not to evacuate, but to prepare tribute. When the hour ends, my forces will land. Any human not kneeling in submission will be killed. The screen went dark. Yuna turned to her staff, and she saw fear in their eyes. Good people, honest workers, none of them soldiers. Get me Sergeant Major Cho, she said. 20 minutes later, a thin old man walked into the command center. Cho De-Young was 78 years old, retired for decades, and he moved with a slight limp from an injury he had received in a war fought long before anyone else in the room was born. but his eyes were sharp. And when he looked at the tactical display, Yuna saw something change in his posture. "How many of them?" he asked. "Preliminary scans suggest 10,000 ground troops," Yuna replied. "We have no military, no weapons beyond mining equipment, no training." Cho nodded slowly. "What we have is 40,000 people who do not want to die. That is enough." Within the hour, New Bison transformed. The miners knew every tunnel in the mountain networks. They had spent years carving through rock and knew passages that no scanner would ever find. They began moving children and elderly into the deepest chambers, where the stone was thick enough to block any bombardment. Engineers gathered in workshops and started converting equipment. Mining lasers designed to cut through rock could cut through armor just as easily. Excavation explosives became improvised weapons. Even the automated hauling vehicles were reprogrammed for different purposes. Cho walked through the preparations, giving quiet instructions. He did not shout or give dramatic speeches. He simply told people what to do, and they did it. There was something in his voice that made even the most frightened civilians find their courage. "We cannot win a direct fight," he told his impromptu commanders. "So we do not fight directly. We make them bleed for every step. We hit them and vanish. We turn our home into their nightmare." When the hour ended, Drawl sent his first wave of ground troops. 500 Vorath soldiers in heavy armor, carrying weapons that could level buildings. They expected to find terrified civilians begging for mercy. Instead, they found empty streets and silence. The first explosion killed 30 of them before they even knew they were in danger. Mining charges buried them to the main road, detonated in sequence, turning the landing zone into a crater-filled. Vara soldiers scattered for cover, but the buildings they hid behind had been prepared. Walls collapsed on top of them. Floors gave way beneath their feet. Every structure was a trap. Then the miners attacked from the tunnels. They came up through hidden passages, fired converted laser cutters that burned through Vorath armor like paper, and disappeared before the enemy could react. Old men who had spent their lives drilling rock now used that same knowledge to kill. Young workers who had never held a weapon fought with desperate fury. The first wave was annihilated in less than an hour. Drawl watched from orbit with growing disbelief. "Send the second wave," he commanded. Double the numbers. 1,000 Vorath soldiers landed in a different zone. This time, they came ready for ambush. They moved carefully, scanned for traps, maintained defensive formations. It did not matter. The humans had already learned their patterns. The miners had spent their lives adapting to dangerous conditions underground. They adjusted faster than any military force Drawl had ever seen. The second wave lasted 2 hours before the survivors retreated in panic in the tunnel networks. The resistance continued their work. Ammunition ran low, so they made more. Weapons broke, so they built new ones. People were wounded, but medics treated them and sent them back to fight. Cho Dae-young stood at a junction point directing traffic. His old injury was bleeding again, but he ignored it. There was too much work to do. "Grandfather." He turned to see his granddaughter running toward him. Cho Minji was 12 years old, small for her age, with her mother's determination in her eyes. She was carrying a crate of ammunition that weighed almost as much as she did. "Minji, you should be in the deep shelters," Cho said. "The fighters need supplies," she replied, not slowing down. "I can carry. I can help," he wanted to argue. He wanted to protect her, but he saw the same fire in her eyes that he had seen in soldiers decades ago. She was not running from danger. She was running toward her people. "Be careful," he said quietly. She nodded and disappeared into the tunnels. 3 days into the siege, the Vorath had lost 4,000 soldiers. The humans had lost 200 defenders. The ratio was impossible, humiliating, and Supreme Commander Drawl was running out of patience. "Begin orbital bombardment," he ordered. Collapse the tunnels. Bury them alive if we must. I want these creatures dead. On the surface, the sky began to burn deep underground. The walls started to shake, and the people of New Bizen held each other in the darkness. They could hear the world above them being destroyed. They knew rescue was far away. They knew they might not survive, but none of them surrendered, and far across human space, a message was already traveling. A distress call that would change everything. A child's voice asking a simple question that would echo across the galaxy. Is anyone coming to help us? The tunnels were collapsing. 3 days of orbital bombardment had turned the surface of New Bizen into a hellscape of craters and fire. The mountains that had protected the colony were being systematically destroyed. Each blast sent shockwaves through the underground networks and buried more passages under tons of rock. Administrator Park Yuna moved through the remaining safe zones, counting survivors and supplies. Both numbers were getting smaller. We have maybe 48 hours of food if we ration carefully, her aide reported. Water recyclers are still functioning, but 3 of the medical stations were destroyed in the last collapse. Casualties are increasing. Yuna nodded and kept walking. There was nothing to say. They all knew the situation. In a small chamber near the central hub, Sergeant Major Cho De-young lay on a makeshift bed while a young medic wrapped his wounds. A piece of debris had caught him during the last bombardment, and his left side was a mess of torn flesh and broken ribs. You need to rest, the medic insisted. I need to get back to my people, Cho replied. Already trying to sit up? You will die if you keep pushing yourself. The old soldier looked at her with tired eyes. I was supposed to die 50 years ago in a war most people have forgotten. Every day since then has been borrowed time. If I spend it lying here while my grandchildren fight, what was the point of surviving? The medic had no answer for that. Maiji appeared at the entrance of the chamber, her small face smudged with dust and exhaustion. She had not stopped working since the siege began, carrying supplies, delivering messages, helping the wounded. She was 12 years old and had already seen more death than most adults. Grandfather, she said. The command center needs you. Cho pushed himself up despite the pain and followed her through the winding tunnels at the command center. Yuna was staring at a communication screen with an expression Cho had never seen before. It was something between rage and despair. What happened? He asked. Yuna turned to him with hollow eyes. They captured a group of children. 15 of them. They were hiding in a shelter we thought was secure. Cho felt his blood turn cold on the screen. Supreme Commander Drawl appeared with the captured children visible behind him. They were crying, terrified, huddled together in the way frightened young ones do in every species across the galaxy. Administrator Park, Drawl said with cold satisfaction. Your resistance has been impressive. Truly, I have never seen civilians fight so effectively. But it ends now. Surrender your people, and I will release these offspring. Continue to resist, and I will execute them one by one. Yuna stepped closer to the screen. Her voice was steady, but Cho could see her hands trembling. You think threatening our children will make us surrender? She asked. You have no idea what you have done. Every human in this galaxy will hunt you now. We will not stop. We will not negotiate. We will chase your empire across every star until there is nothing left but ash. Drawl seemed amused. You are in no position to make threats. I am not making a threat, Yuna replied. I am telling you what will happen. You started a war with a species that does not forgive, that does not forget, that will sacrifice everything to protect its young. You could kill every human on this planet, and it would not save you. It would only guarantee your destruction. Let us test that theory. Drawl said. He gestured to a soldier, and before anyone could react, a weapon fired. One of the children fell. The scream that came from Yuna was not words. It was something deeper, more primal. Cho had heard that sound before, on battlefields long ago, when parents lost children. It was the sound of a soul breaking. The screen went dark for a long moment. No one in the command center moved. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on them like a physical force. Then Yuna turned to face her people. There were tears on her face, but her eyes had changed. The despair was gone. What remained was something harder, colder, more dangerous. "Send the recording to Earth," she said. "Send it to every human colony, every ship, every station. Make sure every single person knows what they did." The message traveled at the speed of light across human space. It reached Earth in hours. It reached the outer colonies within a day. And everywhere it went, something changed on Earth. Recruiting stations that normally processed a few dozen applicants per week were suddenly overwhelmed. Not just soldiers, everyone. Doctors, engineers, teachers, elderly veterans who had not held weapons in decades. They all came. They all wanted to fight ships that were scheduled for maintenance launched early. Crews that were supposed to be on leave canceled their time off. An entire civilization looked at the image of a dead child and made a collective decision without any need for discussion. The United Earth Navy carrier Indomitable was already in transit when Captain Kwon Seung-ho received the broadcast. He was a careful commander, known for precise planning and measured responses. When he saw the recording, he ordered the engines pushed beyond their safety limits. "Sir, we could damage the drive systems," his chief engineer warned. "Then we will arrive on burning engines," Kwon replied. "Those are our people. Those are our children. We will not be late." His crew did not argue. They had seen the same broadcast. Every one of them would have made the same choice across the fleet. Other captains made similar decisions. Ships that should have taken weeks to arrive would reach New Bizen in days. The humans were coming, and they were coming angry. Back in the tunnels, the survivors continued their desperate resistance. They had no way of knowing if help was coming. They only knew that they had to hold on. Minji found her grandfather sitting alone in a dark passage. He was looking at an old photograph he carried everywhere. His wife, who had died years ago. His children and grandchildren. The family he had built in peacetime. "Are we going to die?" Minji asked quietly. Cho looked at her. This small, brave girl who had done more in 3 days than most people did in a lifetime. "Maybe," he said honestly. "But if we do, we will die standing. We will die protecting each other. And whoever survives will remember that the people of New Bizen did not surrender. They did not break. They fought until the very end." Minji sat down beside him. "I am scared." "Good," Cho said. "Being scared means you understand the danger. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what needs to be done despite the fear. You have more courage than soldiers twice your age, Minji." Above them, the bombardment continued, but somewhere in the darkness of space, engines burned hot as humanity raced toward its children, and when they arrived, there would be a reckoning. 1 year later, the galaxy had learned a new truth. The war between humanity and the Varth Dominion lasted 11 months. In that time, the Dominion lost 60% of its fleet, all of its conquered territories, and its emperor. Worlds that had been under Varth control for centuries suddenly found themselves free as human forces swept through system after system. But the humans did not conquer. They liberated. And that confused everyone. General Kethfer stood on the balcony of what had once been the Imperial Palace, looking out at a city that still bore the scars of orbital bombardment. Human ships had struck military targets with surgical precision, leaving civilian areas largely intact. It was not the total destruction the Varth would have inflicted on a defeated enemy. He had surrendered his forces 3 months into the war. Not out of cowardice, but out of pragmatism. He had seen what was coming and chose to save what lives he could. In exchange, He provided intelligence that helped the humans end the war faster with fewer casualties on both sides. Now, he served as the interim leader of a broken dominion. Waiting to learn what fate humanity had decided for his species, a shuttle descended through the clouds and landed in the palace courtyard. Kethver watched it with a mixture of fear and resignation. Today, the humans would deliver their judgment. Delegation that emerged was smaller than he expected. No military escort, no show of force. Just a handful of diplomats in simple clothing, and leading them was a face Kethver recognized from intelligence reports. Administrator Park Yuna, the woman who had defied Supreme Commander Draal, the woman whose colony had sparked. The entire war she walked with a slight limp now, a reminder of injuries sustained during the siege. But her eyes were clear and steady as she approached him. General Kethver, she said. Her voice was professional, neutral. Thank you for meeting with us. I was not aware I had a choice. Kethver replied. A hint of something that might have been humor crossed Yuna's face. You surrendered. You helped end the war. You saved lives. That gives you more choices than you might think. They sat across from each other in the great council chamber where Draal had once dismissed Kethver's warnings. The irony was not lost on either of them. I will be direct, Yuna said. Humanity has debated what to do with the Vorath for months. Some wanted complete destruction, an eye for an eye. Your species killed our children, so we would end yours. Kethver felt his heart sink. He had expected this. It was what the Vorath would have done. Others wanted occupation. Yuna continued. Military control for generations. Disarmament. Forced labor to pay reparations. Turn the Dominion into a servant state. And what did you decide? Kethver Askaduna was silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. We decided to be better than that. Kethver stared at her. I do not understand. We are offering terms. Yuna said. War crime tribunals for those directly responsible for atrocities, including Draal and his commanders. Reparations to be paid over time, in resources and labor, not blood. Complete military restructuring with human oversight. And if all conditions are met, a path to peaceful coexistence. Coexistence? Kethver repeated the word as if it was from an alien language. After what we did? After the children we killed? You offer peace? Yes. Why? Yuna stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the same damaged city Kethver had been watching earlier. My colony was attacked. She said, I watched my people die. I saw children murdered to make a point. I have every reason to want revenge. Every night I dream about what Draal did, and every morning I wake up angry. She turned back to face him, but revenge would not. Bring them back. Destroying your species would not heal our wounds. It would only create new ones. We would become what you were, conquerors who kill because we can. Oppressors who answer pain with more pain. Her voice cracked slightly. But she continued, our children did not die so we could build an empire of vengeance. They died protecting each other. The people of New Bizan fought and sacrificed because they believed in something worth saving. If we throw that away to satisfy our anger, then they died for nothing. Kethver was quiet for a long time. Finally he asked, how can you trust us? How do you know we will not rebuild and attack again? We do not know, Yuna admitted. Trust must be earned. It will take generations. There will be difficulties and setbacks and moments when both sides will want to give up. But the alternative is eternal war. And we are tired of war. She extended her hand. A human gesture of agreement. Kethver knew from his studies. General, you tried to warn your people. You surrendered to save lives. You have already shown that Vorath can make better choices. Help. You build something new. Help us prove that enemies can become allies. Kethver looked at her hand. In his entire life, He had never imagined this moment. A human offering partnership to a Varath. A victim extending grace to a representative of her attackers. He took her hand. "I will try," he said. "I cannot promise my people will accept this. There will be resistance. Many still believe in the old ways. Then we will face that resistance together." Una replied as they finalized the documents. Kethver found himself asking the question that had haunted him since he first observed humanity years ago. "Administrator Park, may I ask something?" "Of course. Why do humans fight so hard?" "I have studied your species extensively, and I still do not fully understand. You come from a harsh world. Yes, you have evolved for conflict. But there is something more. Something I cannot identify." Una considered the question carefully. "We grew up on a world that tried to kill us every single day," she said. "Predators hunted us. Diseases ravaged. U.S., the weather itself seemed determined to wipe us out. By every logical measure, we should have died long ago." She looked at him with an expression that was somehow both sad and proud. "But we did not die. And the reason we did not die is because we learned to protect each other. Alone, a human is fragile. Together, we are something else. We fight so hard because we are not fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for our families, our communities, our species. When you attacked New Bizan, you did not attack a colony. You attacked a family. That was your mistake." Kethver nodded slowly. "And when we threatened the children, you guaranteed that every human in existence would hunt you until your empire was ash," Una said. "You turned a border conflict into an existential war. Not because humans are aggressive, but because we will burn down the galaxy to protect our young." She smiled. And there was something ancient and fierce in that expression. Supreme Commander Draal thought our compassion made us weak. He was wrong. Our compassion is the source of our strength. We care so much that we will do anything to protect what we love. That is why we fight. That is why we win. And that is why we can offer mercy even to those who hurt us, because our humanity is not a weakness to be overcome. It is the very thing that makes us human." Kethver signed the treaty with a hand that no longer trembled as the human delegation departed. Una paused at the door and turned back. "General, one more thing." "Yes?" "The other species in the galaxy are watching what happens here. They saw the war. They saw what we are capable of. Some of them are afraid of us now. But I would like them to see something else as well." "What would that be?" Una smiled again. And this time it reached her eyes. "That being strong enough to destroy your enemies is nothing special. But being strong enough to forgive them, that is something worth remembering." She left and across the galaxy. In council chambers and command bridges and quiet rooms where leaders made decisions, a new warning began to spread. Not about human weapons or human ferocity, but about something far more dangerous the species called humanity could fight. Like demons and still choose to show mercy. Leave them alone. They walked away from the treaty, signing into a courtyard where human and Varath officials were already beginning the difficult work of building peace in the distance. A child laughed. The first generation that might grow up without war. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were a family, and families protect their own. The Varath sensors detected the human fleet while it was still hours away. Supreme Commander Draal studied the approaching ships with growing confidence. 37 vessels. His tactical officer reported, "We have 112. They are outnumbered 3-1. Draal allowed himself a cold smile. Finally, a proper battle. These humans will learn the difference between fighting miners and facing the Dominion fleet. General Kethver stood at the edge of the command bridge watching the same data. His hearts were heavy with the knowledge of what was coming. But it was not the Varath who would be teaching lessons today. Supreme Commander Kethver said quietly. I recommend we withdraw. Take what prisoners we have and leave this system. The humans will pursue, but we can withdraw? Draal turned on him with fury in his eyes. You shame yourself, General. We do not run from inferior species. They are not inferior, Kethver replied. They are something we have never encountered. Please, there is still time to silence, Draal commanded. One more word of cowardice and I will have you executed. Take your position and prepare for battle. Kethver bowed his head and moved to his station. He had done everything he could. Now he could only watch the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The carrier Indomitable led the formation, flanked by cruisers and destroyers that should have looked tiny against the Vorath. Armada Captain Quan Sung-ho opened a communication channel. His face appeared on the Vorath screens, and Draal was surprised to see no fear in the human expression. Only cold determination. This is Captain Quan of the United Earth Navy, he said. You killed our children. There will be no terms. The channel closed before Draal could respond. Arrogant creatures, Draal muttered. All ships, attack formation. Destroy them. What followed was unlike any battle in Vorath history. The human ships did not behave like any enemy the Dominion had ever fought. They did not try to maintain safe distances. They did not protect their vessels. They did not fight to survive. They fought to kill. Drone ships that should have been used for reconnaissance flew directly into Vorath cruisers and detonated their power cores. The explosions tore through multiple vessels at once. Human fighters, tiny compared to Vorath interceptors, flew into enemy hangars and self-destructed among the parked craft. A human destroyer took a fatal hit to its engine section. Instead of retreating, it accelerated toward the nearest Vorath battleship and rammed it at full speed. Both ships vanished in a ball of fire. Draal watched in disbelief. They are insane. They are throwing away their own lives. Kethver spoke without turning from his station. They are not throwing away their lives. They are spending them. There is a difference. The battle raged for hours. The Vorath still had superior numbers, but the humans fought with a ferocity that defied calculation. For every human ship destroyed, 2 or 3 Vorath vessels went with it, and while the space battle consumed Draal's attention, the real strike was already underway. Lieutenant Beek Junseo led the ground assault. 50 drop pods fell through the burning atmosphere of New Bizon, carrying 200 soldiers directly into the occupied zones. It was a suicide mission by any conventional measure. Beek did not care about conventional measures. His pod slammed into the ground near the main Vorath camp, and he was moving before the dust settled. His rifle found targets automatically. His body flowed through combat like water through cracks in stone. The Vorath ground forces were not prepared for this. They had been fighting exhausted miners for days. They expected broken resistance, easy prey. Instead, they faced trained soldiers who had been watching broadcasts of dead children for the entire journey. Every human who dropped from the sky carried that image in their mind. Every trigger pull was an answer to that broadcast. Beek fought through 3 defensive lines without slowing. His armor was scorched and cracked. A Vorath blade had opened a gash across his shoulder. He did not stop behind him. His soldiers followed with the same relentless energy. Medics treated wounds while firing weapons. Soldiers with broken limbs crawled forward rather than retreat. The Vorath had never seen anything like it in the tunnel networks. The survivors heard the fighting above. Sergeant Major Cho gathered the remaining defenders. Our people are here, he said. We push up. We hit them from below while our soldiers hit them from above. Today we take back our home. They attacked with everything they had left. Miners and soldiers fighting together. The Vorath were caught between 2 forces of humans who had decided that retreat was not an option on the Vorath command ship. Draal finally understood his mistake. All forces withdraw, he ordered. Full retreat to the rendezvous point. But the humans did not let them withdraw. Human ships that should have been crippled continued fighting. They latched onto retreating Varth vessels and held them in place for killing shots. They chased runners across the system and destroyed them one by one. Kethver approached Drawl on the bridge. "I warned you," he said. There was no satisfaction in his voice, only exhaustion. "I told you they do not fight like us. They do not stop. They do not let go. You taught them we exist, and now they will hunt us across the galaxy." Drawl snarled. "This is one battle. The Dominion is finished," Kethver interrupted. "Look at the projections. They are not just fighting here. This broadcast went everywhere. Every human world is mobilizing. Every ship is preparing for war. We did not conquer them. We united them." An alarm blared across the bridge. Hull breach detected human soldiers had boarded the flagship. Drawl drew his weapon. "I will not be captured by these animals. You will not have a choice," Kethver said. The bridge doors exploded inward. Lieutenant Beak walked through the smoke with his rifle raised. He was covered in blood, though none of it appeared to be his own. His eyes found Drawl with predator precision behind him. More human soldiers poured in. The Varth bridge crew was overwhelmed in seconds. Beak approached the Supreme Commander slowly. Drawl fired his weapon, but a human soldier intercepted the shot with his own body. He fell, but another soldier took his place. They kept coming. They always kept coming. "You killed our children," Beak said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "There is a price for that." Drawl looked into the human's eyes and finally understood what Kethver had been trying to tell him. He saw no mercy there, only judgment, and in that moment, the Supreme Commander of the Varth Dominion learned the true cost of ignorance.